Hey, music makers. I don't know where my camera's gone to. Let's just do a quick switch up here and check it out there. Hey, music makers. My name's Leon Harrell. Welcome to In Tune. On today's episode, we're going to talk about guided improvisation, which is sort of a bridge between completely free improvisation and reading sheet music. So if you've struggled in the past to learn how to improvise, or sort of break away from just purely written sheet music, that's what today's show is for. If you're new to the show, say hello in the comments. Let me know your name, where you're located, and what instrument you play. We have folks join us from all around the world, so it's nice to see where you're at. Okay, we're going to jump right into it today with our first example, and we're going to be using a software called Piano Marvel, which is something we talk about on this show. So before we jump into the example, I'll give you a link. If you would like to download a free 30-day trial of Piano Marvel, visit 1minutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. And if you decide to continue on, it is a subscription service. By using our affiliate code 1Minute, you'll get a 20% discount off your monthly subscription. So we're in Piano Marvel. And the first example we're going to look at today is an example that builds on last week's episode. So last week we talked about improvising using the black keys of the keyboard, which coincidentally create the pentatonic scale. So we're going to start with that today, and then we'll build in some additional things. So if you're in Piano Marvel, if you go into the music library, so just clicking on library, you're going to find quite a few resources on improvisation just by searching in the title field, improvisation. All right, and you'll get a handful of things come back that contain some improvisation materials. But today we're going to start by looking at one of my favorite resources in here, which is the Alfred Group Piano for Adults course. This is a very comprehensive course, and it builds on a lot of the Piano Marvel method information, but it takes it much further than what you'll find in their method cabinet. So we're going to click on this one for the group lesson, and we're going to look into, let's see, where was that located? Let's see, I saved a link for it. I think it's going to be in Keyboard Basics, Black Key Improvisation, so page 13 here. Okay, so the thing I want to point to you is when you're looking at this material for the Alfred Group lesson, which is what we use in our Virtuoso lessons, you will have access to the textbook or the worksheet material directly from Piano Marvel by clicking on this little PDF link here in the top left corner. That will open up the textbook material. All right, and you'll be able to see all the additional information that would go along with that particular lesson. So in this case, they are showing us the teacher accompaniment that goes with the improvisation. They're showing us what notes to play along, which are going to be our black keys on the keyboard. For beginners, they're going to break that up for use your left hand, fingers 3 and 2, middle fingers 3, pointer fingers 2, and on our right hand, 2, 3, and 4, on the additional black keys. Okay, but you can, in my point of view, you can use any fingers you like to play the keys. At this point for improv, the fingers you use are not important. Okay, but let's take a look at this one. The software is going to play for us this accompaniment track, so we're going to take a listen to that first. And it's going to give us just a little bit of information to work with. So in this case, it's giving us a starting note, G flat, and the accompanying worksheet that we just looked at. It's letting us know, let's keep our improvisation limited to these 5 notes. So just above middle C, we've got D flat, E flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. Let's take a listen to the track first. Okay, so to do that in Piano Marvel has 2 different modes, prepare mode and assess mode. For an improvisation track like this, we're going to want to work in assess mode. This is going to allow the backing track to play in the background. So to make sure we can hear that, we're going to click on Control, make sure the volume for that's turned up sufficiently, and we're just going to click Assess. Let's take a listen to it first.
1, 1, 2, 2, set, go.
All right, so it's a pretty simple backing track, and there's a little bit of audio breaking up on my computer when I'm live streaming, but when you're trying the software yourself, you won't notice that. Okay, so, and I'll turn up that volume just a hair bit more. All right, let's take a look at the worksheet first. So the backing track is just giving us a very simple pattern. All right, we'll take a listen. I'll play through the backing track a little bit on the keyboard one time, so. Right, so it's just a very simple oscillation between, in the key of G flat major, the 1 chord or the 1 major 7, moving to the 5-7 chord, and back to 1. All right, so we're just moving between these 2 chords back and forth. All right, so now we'll try a little bit of improvisation. So last week we talked about sort of a framework for improvisation, just to keep it pretty simple. And that framework was create a pattern, repeat the patterns that you create, and then eventually break the expectations that the pattern has set up. So we'll unpack that a little bit. So in this case, we're going to be starting our improvisation on measure 4, and the first note we'll play is G flat. So we're going to think a little bit ahead, how do we want to create that? So we'll listen to that accompaniment one more time.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, and you get the idea. So we're starting our pattern on G flat, and let's keep our pattern pretty simple. So here's a pretty simple pattern. All right, so we'll work with that pattern. So in this case, I'm playing G flat, A flat, B flat, and then coming back down. All right, so we'll just play around with that pattern. We'll repeat that pattern. We'll move the pattern around, but we'll only use these 5 notes. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to put them all in the right hand. Thumb on D flat, pointer on E flat, middle on G flat, finger 4 on A flat, and pinky on B flat. Okay? Let's give it a go. So we're just going to do some free improv to start. Oh, whoops, I hit the wrong button. Let's reload that real quick. So we're in Alfred. We're going to click on Black Key Improvisation. Here we go.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, so we created a pattern. I repeated it a couple times in there. And then occasionally I broke the expectation by playing the other 2 notes from our scale. So you'll notice in Piano Marvel, typically when we're reading something, we'll have all the notes written out, and the notes that we play correctly, it'll tell us so in green. So we'll see that first G flat here is in green. And then the notes that we miss from the sheet music, it will highlight them in red. So when we're playing through these improvisation examples, there's really nothing to compare it to. So it's just marking the notes that we play in red. So don't think of them as incorrect notes. It's just notating out what it is you played. Okay, so we're going to do that one more time. All right, we'll do it in assess mode. All right, we're listening to the first 4 measures, and then we're improvising something using just these 5 notes.
1, 2, set, go.
you get the idea. Using just these 5 notes, work with that. If you are not totally brand new to the keyboard and you're ready to explore out a little bit wider, use the remaining black keys around the keyboard. Sort of keep it to the middle range for now, just to keep it simple, but don't feel limited to these 5 notes here. So what I'm going to do is play this teacher accompaniment for you on my keyboard, and that will give you some more time to practice along. So I'm going to load up that worksheet. Okay, and let's just do this for a little while. I don't really have an idea of how long I'll do it, but that way you can improvise along as I'm playing the teacher track. So here we go. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, let me make sure I get the chords right. So we've got G flat is our first chord, and A flat 7 is our second chord. So here we go. 1, 2, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so you can use that track. You can rewind or rewatch this part of the video over again to improvise with that. And this is a really nice, just sort of typical oscillating pattern, just where we're taking 2 chords, in this case the 1 chord and the 5 chord, and we're just rocking back and forth. That's sort of like a bossa nova style accompaniment there. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is a bit more of a guided approach. So this first one, it's guiding us in the sense that it's giving us an accompaniment track, and it's keeping our choices pretty limited to these 5 black keys. And last week, like I said, we went over that in a lot of detail last week. So let's move on to our second example, which you will find in Piano Marble, which is called Blues Improvisation for black keys. So in this case, this is the graphic here. This comes with 6 lessons to sort of progressively take us to improvising more and more using these black keys. So we're going to start out on lesson 1, which is just going to introduce us to a 3-note pattern using these 3 black keys. All right, and the first example is just going to be sort of an etude or a study to get our fingers warmed up and using these 3 notes. So we're going to do it in prepare mode. All right, first, prepare mode allows us to be the driver of the software. So that gives me a little bit more time to read the notes, find them on the keyboard, and react to reading the music. It's not really testing, are we playing the rhythm accurately? That's on us to do. But it is testing, are we playing the notes accurately? Okay, so I'm just going to read this one time, counting 2 measures, and then counting along as I read it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And last time. All right, and we just end on a whole note there. So really all we're doing is repeating this pretty simple pattern a couple times, and it's allowing you to practice it and test to make sure you're playing those notes correctly. Okay, so now when we do it in assessment mode, there should be a little bit of accompaniment that goes along with that.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, so with the accompaniment, it's a little bit faster. Okay, so the first lesson, they're just teaching you those 3 notes and this pattern to start to work with. So then you move on to the next lesson. And now it's time to improvise with that pattern. So in this case, they're showing us the starting pattern, all right? And then it's up to you. You can repeat the pattern or start to break expectations as you play along. So this first example, just these 3 notes, we'll play those. We'll start to make up our own as we go. And it's a relatively short excerpt, okay? So we'll do this in assessment mode so we can hear the accompaniment play along.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, so they're giving us some good notes to guide us along in certain parts, and then they're giving us plenty of space to improvise in between these notated parts here. So again, you'll notice wherever you've played the notated music correctly, it'll highlight that in green. Wherever there's free space to play and improvise, it'll write in the notes that you played and it'll mark them in red, but again, they're not incorrect. You're just improvising in that spot. Okay, so moving on, we'll finish out this lesson because I like this one. Now we're looking into building on that 3-note pattern. Now we're using 5 notes. All right, and you'll notice when it pops open the lesson, we've got 3 different patterns we can learn in here. So the first pattern is pretty simple. All right, so we're just going up and down that pentatonic scale. The second pattern. All right, so a two-part phrase there. And then the third pattern. All right, a slight modification of the first 3-note pattern that we learned. All right, so you can go through and practice these in prepare mode, practice them in assessment mode each, just to warm up and get used to the pattern. So let's do that first pattern. All right, we'll do it in assessment mode. All right, and if you're new to the piano, maybe you want to take that down. 120 beats per minute is a pretty steady tempo. That's pretty fast. So you might want to drag your tempo slider down a little bit to 74 maybe and try it. So we'll do it at 74 in assessment mode.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, so pretty simple pattern, pretty straightforward exercise there. All right, and like I said, there's 3 patterns to practice with for that one. So let's go into the second pattern. All right, again, we'll try it in assessment mode. Still using the same 5 notes.
2, set, go, go.
All right, and it is a pretty simple pattern, but there was definitely a spot where I flubbed there when we look back. What I like about Piano Marvel, again, it notates where did you play things correctly in green, where did you get off in red. So I can see here that in measure 11, I sort of zoned out for a moment and I misread the notes there. All right, and then it'll also, there was a little mistake here in measure 15. All right, so if I was really working on building this up so I could improvise a little bit better using these patterns, I'd go back through and I would work on those a little bit more until I got 100 on this. All right, but we're going to move on just for time's sake to look at pattern number 3. All right, so pattern number 3 is building on that first one we did. All right, but there's some slight variations in there, I think. No, it just repeats that pattern. So we'll go ahead and do that one in assessment at full tempo.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, so it's starting to get more fluid in the hand as we practice through doing the patterns in assessment mode. So now we'll move on to the second improvisation in this series here, which is improvising with 5 notes. Okay, so again, guided improvisation. They're going to give us some blocks to play, a couple measures to play with printed music, and then lots of free space to improvise in between those things. So here we go. All right, in assess mode.
1, 2, set, go.
Let's do that one more time just so we can hear the count off.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, not bad at all. So you can continue on with this lesson. The last part is going to take us through 6-note patterns. All right, so the patterns are getting a little bit more elaborate. You'll notice they're adding in the remaining note of the blues scale. So as we learned last week in the pentatonic scale, all right, I'll build on G flat. All right, if we add in the A natural, that would be the blue note, all right, the flatted third. All right, now we've got the complete blues scale, which we might choose to start on E flat. All right, or we could start it on G flat. Just depends on sort of what context there is in the music. All right, so let's look at that pattern. All right, we'll do it in prepare mode just to give us a little more time to read it. All right, here we go. 2 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, excellent. So just pretty simple pattern again, and it's allowing us plenty of repetitions to practice to get that pattern under our hand. All right, again, there are 3 patterns in this series here. All right, let's look at that second pattern. Looks can be deceiving. I don't think it's as challenging as it looks with all the sharps or the naturals and flats in the keyboard. But let's do it in prepare mode and take a look at that. All right, starts on A natural. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Oh, sorry, it's G flat. 1, 2. It is a little bit challenging. Let's break it down a little bit. So let's do it in prepare mode, much slower. So here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. One more time. All right, so I read through that pretty slowly. I would go back and work that up to tempo because it's really not as complicated as it looked. So here's an example of what it is a little bit faster. All right, and it would just continue that same pattern over and over. So let's look at the third pattern. All right, again, using some of the same elements there. All right, in prepare mode. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. last time. All right, so this pattern is essentially just kind of outlining that pentatonic scale, coming down in groups of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a connector note in between them. So not a terribly difficult pattern, easier to play than it is to read on the score. Okay, so let's put it all together in that last and final improvisation with 6 notes. All right, and again, they'll give us some music to play along with and plenty of space to improvise. So here we go in assessment.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, not bad at all. Okay, so in this example here, they haven't filled in as many patterns for us to play along, so it's a little more challenging because you have to remember the patterns that you just learned in the previous lesson. Okay, but I like this because it gives you something to work with. It gives you a little bit more structure. Improvisation, there really is no right or wrong, but depending on where you're at in your learning process, you know, sometimes you want more guidance and sometimes you want less, depending on the particular skill you're building. Okay, let's finish up with our third example for today. We are going to take a look at the, let's see, where do I have this example? We're going to look in my bookmarks, view. This third example I found is a piece called Improvisation. Richard P. Anderson's the composer. And in this case, again, it's a pretty simple repeating pattern. This is a bit more of an ostinato or passacaglia style, where there's a short phrase of music that repeats over and over in the left hand, and then you can make up the improvisation for the right hand. This particular improvisation is built in the key of G major. All right, and if you don't know that scale, it's just all the white notes except for the F becomes F sharps. All right, G major. So the melody kernel that they're giving us to work with, all right, just a nice scale-wise step down in the G major scale with just a little turn at the end. All right, in this one, there's no additional practice modes for this one. All right, but it's very similar to the one we just looked at for the blues improvisation. So let's take a listen to this one first in assessment.
1, set, go.
Okay, so pretty flowing, all right? So we're going to try that one out now.
1.
Improvising along in G major. So some tips to think about before we play it. So they're giving us the first part of the melody. All right, so let's consider that our pattern. Long, down, down, turn, down. All right, if we want to sort of simplify the concept. All right, so we can repeat that pattern starting on any note of the G major scale, really. All right, continuing on. So let's play along with it with the accompaniment.
1. Set, go.
Okay, so a nice simple pattern to play along with. We'll do it one more time together, playing, I'll improvise the melody along, and then I'll do the teacher accompaniment, and that'll give you something to practice with if you want to try improving yourself. So here we go. One more time.
1. Set, go.
All right, so there's really no right or wrong, just playing notes from the G major scale. All right, so let's do a little bit of free play here. I'll play along this accompaniment. All right, and I'll loop through this. Let's loop through 3 times. All right, so I'll play the melody to get you started. Then we'll play this passage 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Second time. Last time. All right, not bad at all. So a nice improvisation to play along with in G major. So this piece reminds me a lot of Gymnopedy by Eric Satie, which I'm curious if that's in the Piano Marvel library. I imagine it probably is. Let's take a look. Yeah, so there is, and I can't remember which one it is. There's 3 Gymnopedies, but it's probably the first one. Let's take a look. All right, and you probably recognize this tune. Let's listen to it in assessment mode just so you can take a listen to it. All right, very similar style to what we just were doing for improvisation.
1, set, go, go.
All right, now pause it there. All right, so if you don't know that piece, look that up on YouTube. That's a really nice piece to sort of improvise along with because it's very simple chords going on. We've got in the key of D major, it would be the 4 chord and then the 1 chord. All right, so that simple pattern, you could improvise nearly anything in the key of D major on top of that. All right, and it's pretty similar to that first example we looked at from, let's pull that back up. So in the favorites here, bookmarks, favorites, example 1. All right, and this came from the Alfred Group Piano textbook. So it's pretty similar as far as what's happening with the harmony to this first example we looked at, which sounded like this. All right, so we have the 1 chord and the 5 chord, which has a pretty similar relationship, just in a different key, to G major to D major. All right, so just oscillating back and forth for those 2 chords. Another piece it reminds me of is Piece. I don't know if that is in Piano Marvel, but we'll give it a go. It's not, and I'm blanking on who that's by. Herbie Hancock, maybe? Piece. Well, here's a version by Bill Evans. Maybe it was by Bill Evans. I can't remember. But anywho, very similar concept, oscillating between the 1 chord and the 4 chord. Or the 1 chord and the 5 chord, depending on the piece. Okay, so check that out if you're interested in improving with a similar style. Okay, that's going to wrap us up for today's show. If you have questions or comments, throw them into live chat or the comment section below throughout the week. Or if you're interested, you can always send us your question directly to our mailbag at oneminutemusiclesson.com/mailbag. That's going to be it for today's show. We always like to end the show by saying thank you to our supporters on Patreon. So thank you, supporters on Patreon, because you are helping us achieve our mission to teach musical literacy around the world. If you want to learn more about that, visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. And again, thank you so much to our patrons. Okay, that's going to be it for today, and we'll be wrapping up next week with our last lesson on improvisation. That's kind of been the theme of April. And that's going to be it. So take care, have a good one, and I'll see you on the next episode of In Tune. See you next time. Bye-bye.